Okay, so I'm going to take a look at some of the building structure here. And but before I do that, I want to get to front face and back face subjects. One way to see what's going on with the front face and back face, what you've got, is to change the view for a moment. And instead of having it shaded with textures, you can take a look at monochrome. And basically, everywhere that's colored on this is a back face. Um, is essentially the back face. And back faces in the simulation will not respond to any kind of lighting effect. I'm not quite sure why it's set up that way. It's just the way it is. So what you want to do when you're doing your modeling is make sure that you do not have back faces exposed to where the sun is going to have an effect. And so all of these basically have to be retextured. And so the simple, as an example, if we put the view back, face style, shaded with textures, and we pick a face that we had noticed before, edit component, that face right there, and use the default material type, and click on that, we can see, well, what's it? This is a beige of some kind. One of these SketchUp things. I'm not quite sure where this came from, but I'm going to delete those because I'm not terribly fond of using the Google things. So I'm just going to get rid of that. And now we can see the back face that I happen to, back face color is this orange. And so what we want to do is basically get rid of that, wrap it around the other way. So let's reverse the face. There's the proper outside face, and we can apply the texture to that. Now, as far as, I think we had the same issue with these guys. So let's take a look here. Let's put the, let's take the texture off. Yeah, on the side also. So let's correct those right away. Right, okay. So if we take these three faces, now that we've taken the texture off, and just reverse them, and retexture them, it'll be alright. Reverse faces, apply the texture, the correct texture, and bingo, they're all okay at this point. Now we see here something else. This is not the way it looked originally. So we have an issue here. Let's open this up again. Get to this face. I have a shortcut for texturing. I applied the letter T to it. And so instead of going through the menu, I just have to type the letter T. And now I can more reasonably get to the functions that, see if I can get this to line up a little bit better, if there's a way to do that. And we'll put the red pin there, and we'll put the red pin down there. Is it going to line up? No, it's not going to line up. Oh, that's a shame. There's enough variation there. Well, alright, we'll just finish with getting that done, and getting this one done. And what I'd like to observe about these is, because of the bug in the exporter, it's not a SketchUp bug, it's an exporter bug to the MSTS. Even though I've gone through the bother of positioning these very nicely in the model, the exporter is going to screw up and reposition all of these textures on these awnings, and it's really unpredictable to say what it's going to look like. As far as I know, the only solution is to bring these guys outside of the component and have them as standalone polys. And because of that, where they touch here, they may be creating vertex points on the face, may create more poly. So let me just touch on that subject now, if I may. We're going to take this face here of the building. I'm going to do a Control-C and a Control-V just to bring it out where it can be examined. And whenever you have cutouts like this, you're creating vertex points at each of the corners. And every one of those vertex points will cause polys to be created. So if we could see the poly lines, it would look something like this. There would be, starting at this corner, it would go down to that vertex point. That would be one side of the triangle. The top of the window would be the other side of the triangle, and then over here, this line would represent the third line of the triangle, and so you'd have one poly triangle right here. Then there'd be, from this line, another line here, and a third line connecting them. You get a second poly triangle. From this line, across the window, the second line, here's the third line, is a third poly triangle, and it goes on all the way across like that. And then, of course, you have, from here, a poly triangle down like that, and one here, and then on the bottom it's doing the same thing. Let me get my lines here. One line of the triangle, the bottom of the window is second, then another line there. We got another triangle there, another triangle there, just like on the top, more triangles across the top. And so the way to solve this problem is to isolate the area where the cutouts occur from what's above and below. And one way to do that is just basically, you can take the top portion and the bottom portion, and now let's get rid of these things that Sketchup generously added. You know, one way to do it is you could take these things right here and say, that's where my component is really going to be, and we're going to do something with these in the middle. That works. I found that a lot of times I actually prefer to isolate the corner of the building, because sometimes the adjacent walls are not made into components, and so I just as soon try and isolate everything that's going to be on that corner that might wind up touching another wall or another structure, so it isn't affected. So what I really wind up doing here is I do these kind of lines, and I make a component there which I'll call corners. And depending on how I do it, maybe it's you know, east corners, or I just have one southeast corner, something like that. Sometimes I may put all the corners in the building. There's no fixed rule about that. It's all circumstantial. Now, there we go. So we got something on here called corners that we've added. Now, because this component called corners was added late in the game, it has the vertices in it that were part of the window, and I'll show you how that works. I'm going to make a copy of it, and there we go. Let's move it away a little bit so we can see it a little bit better. Here you can see, here's the two vertices that were from this part of the window. Here's the two vertices that were that part of the window. They're going to make polys, and so the only way to get rid of them is to erase them, and the way SketchUp handles that is if you draw a couple lines like that that touch the vertices, and then erase them, they go away. And so now the corners, the rising line on the corner goes all the way to the top interrupted. It's 14 feet. That one's 14 feet. And these two are also 14 feet. So we know we've got something that's right. You delete this extraneous copy. The original one's back in here. And I go, oh, I made a mistake. I have just a face back here. I don't have a component I've edited. So let's just finish up what I'm doing here. Let's make this wall portion. Let's do this first. Let's make this patch, this little area between the window, let's just call that a patch. And call that component, oh, I don't know, let's call this wall A. And this is a patch for wall A. So I've got that. I don't need these guys anymore. Move those out. And I'm going to take this wall patch component, do a Control-C, Control-V, drop it in there, drop another one in there. Now I want to go back and get rid of those lines. I'll hide them. And notice that there's these vertices on here that are sitting on this wall, on both top and bottom, and they interrupt the line. And so each of those are going to, like I said before, are going to create polys. Now by putting components in there and then coming back and erasing these lines, I get rid of these vertices. This rectangle is now a clean 2 polys. This one's 2 polys. I unhide the patches I made, and I can turn this into wall A boards, and I can take wall A boards and these patches and these corners and make a component called wall A. Right? So it's got all the elements in it. Now I go back here. I don't want this original thing anymore. I'm just going to delete it. And now I can take the reconstructed wall and move it in here. Let's get it in here. Drop it right there. And now this wall, wall A, if I do a check on that and say how many polys does that have, it has 14. Did I pick up the right one? I think maybe I grabbed one that's too much later. There we go. I got the right one now. Let's go back and take a look at what this face was originally. And after editing, we had 14 polys. Before editing, we had 18. So we were able to reduce the poly count now by 4. That's not a whole lot considering this model. But if you had a building that had many stories on it, that it begins to add up, and then you roll it around to this side, and you're going to have extra polys on here, and you roll it around on this side, and you're going to have extra polys on here. Again, and only